It's editing time. Happy New Year everyone! Welcome back to another video. In the last video, I showed you how I made the Cyberpunk Photoshoot happen. Check it out in the link below if you haven't watched it already. In this video, I'm going to show you how I achieved this neon cyberpunk look in Lightroom. No preset required, nice and easy, quick and straightforward. It's going to take 3 to 5 minutes for each photo. So, let's get started. Alright, let's see if we can get 5 photos done in 20 minutes. First of all, usually I like to fix the exposure first, so let's just do that right now. I want it a little bit brighter. And then I'm going to bring up the shadow a little bit just to see the details here in the hair. Now, since we're going for the dramatic look, I'm going to change the hue to pretty much to the extreme. I'm going to set the blue to around here, purple towards the red, and magenta. You don't quite see these yet because I'll need to bump up the saturation in order to see them properly. So let's do that. I can do it globally as well, but I want more control over each color, so I'm just gonna bring down the green and then bring up everything else. So right now you can see the purple is already popping out a little bit more. Let's go back up here. So right now let's change the tint towards more purple. And that's gonna be the theme throughout this edit. It might be a little bit more, but we'll fix it later. Next up, I'm gonna change up the hue of the subject to make it pop a little bit more. But before that, let's just bring in more details from jeans and his head. How we do that is, let's reset these. I'm gonna bring the exposure up a little and shadow up. Not too much to make it more natural. Something like this. And as you can see, we're bringing up a little bit of the jeans detail here. Give it a little clarity, texture. Usually these things will make it pop a little bit more, especially in the dark areas. And for his head, we're just gonna make it a little bit brighter. Let's just do that right now. Not that bright. Okay, a little bit brighter. Okay, that's looking good. Okay, as we said, I'm gonna bring his jean jacket part to a different hue just to set it apart a little. And sorry, exposure. Let's give it more blue, something like this. Okay, more natural. So now it's no longer blending into the background. Instead, it's popping because of a different color. Now, let's give it a little bit of clarity. Usually it creates a more dramatic look, but it might not work so well in the skin tone area, so be careful with that. For example, if I drag it all the way up, you can see it's popping, but it's really unnatural, and especially in the skin tone area. So let's just bring it back down a little, give it a bit of texture. Pretty happy with this look currently, but we'll give it a little bit more vibrance since we're going ultra saturated. Unnatural looking this time. Next up, let's just give the ground a little bit more of the popping look. How we do that is to use a gradient filter and give it more texture and clarity. Now maybe even a different hue on the ground, just to separate it from the building in the background. I'm pretty happy with this look. Alright, moving on. Next up, we have this back portrait with some huge billboards in the background. It portrays the idea of cyberpunk really well. So let's fix the exposure first, as I think it's way too dark in the detail area. We can bring the highlight down to save some of the blown out details, but be careful not to do too much of it, as it's gonna look unnatural. As you can see, there's so much detail in a raw photo. Alright, next up, let's go to the HSL, which is hue, saturation, and luminance. We'll bring the red, orange, and yellow to the left side, and then let's just eliminate all the green altogether. Green and aqua. You can see it's not much green and aqua in this photo. It's mainly this bag here that we're trying to eliminate. Let's go back up to the top. Similar to the last photo, we're going to bring out the details in the jeans. This time let's try using the paintbrush. So now I'm painting onto it. If you want to see what area you're painting, you can press O to see what area you're targeting right now. Okay. Now press O again. As you can see, we're bringing a lot more details out from the jeans if we bump up the exposure, but be careful for the edges. It might look unnatural if it's overdone. We can also bring out the shadow and bump up texture and clarity. Look at the comparison. It's so much brighter than the other one. Now, since this photo is already tilted, we can use this as a driver to tilt it even more, to make it even more dramatic. We can use the leveling tool. Let's try leveling it to this billboard right here. Ooh, it's like the character is walking into the unknown. Now finally, we can give it a little bit purple tint and bring the temperature down to the cooler side. Now it's just a creative choice, it's not the only way to do it. Instead of white balance, I can also do it with split toning and achieve similar result. Okay, lastly, we're gonna bring up the puddle reflection again. We're gonna bring more texture and clarity in. Look at the clarity slider. It really makes the ground pop. But again, not too much or else it's gonna look really unnatural. Do you get it yet? It's all about striking the balance here. Alright, I'm pretty happy with this one. Let's move on. This photo here, I think the exposure is a little bit dark again. I'm gonna bring it up a little with a little bit more shadow. Now let's go down to HSL. Similar to the last one, I'm gonna bring red, orange, yellow over to the left side. Don't care about green. Bring aqua and blue to the left side, purple to the left side, and magenta to the left side. Pretty much everything to the left side for this one. If you take a look at this, the green is only affecting the small spot in the middle there. Okay. Alright, now let's move on to the face. I'm gonna use a radial filter, give it a little bit more exposure, a bit more contrast, a bit more white, a bit more highlight, and bring the saturation down a little bit. Just make it more natural, and some contrast as well. This one is a little bit different than the two photos before. Instead of the purple blue look, I'm gonna go for the orange and teal look. So we can give it a little bit more saturation in the blue teal area, just also aqua, a little bit more on the red and orange. Lastly, I'm going to give it a little bit of texture and clarity. Be careful with clarity here since we're dealing with a large area of his face here. If we do it too much, as you can see, there's going to be a lot of natural looking light on his face. So let's just keep it subtle and maybe a little bit to the cooler side and a little bit of vibrance. That's it. I'm happy with the look now. Moving on. This is probably my favorite photos from the shoot. Let's just fix the exposure again. I feel like everything I shot is a little bit underexposed for this shoot. We'll give it a little bit of shadow just to bring the details in the bottom out a little bit. Pretty happy with the exposure now. Let's just go down to the HSL sliders now. Similar to the last one. Red, orange, yellow. Since we have some green here, let's just turn it yellow. I think it matches better with the cyberpunk look. Now, purple to blue, magenta. Now let's move back up. We're gonna go with the purple and blue again. And now you see everything is coming together. Let's bring the texture up a little bit, clarity up a little bit, and vibrance. Almost there. And lastly, I'm going to emphasize the raindrop here on the window. We can press K to bring up the brush filter, or just click this brush right here. Paint it a little bit here and here. Doesn't have to be too precise. Again, you can press O to see what you just drew on. Now we can give it a little bit more exposure, a lot more clarity, more texture, a little bit more contrast. Now you can see the raindrops pop a little bit better. And I think I'm happy with this look. I really like this photo. Okay, finally on the last photo. Again, it's underexposed for some reason. So let's just bring the exposure back up a little bit and compensate it with the highlight slider down a little bit. And I still find it a little bit too contrasty. So what I'm gonna do is create a gradient filter. Have it to go from right to left and bring the exposure up a little bit with the shadow up a little bit. As you can see, we're bringing so much details back from the building and the floor. Maybe even some clarity, because who doesn't like clarity? And now let's try something more fun and creative. I'm gonna use this red right here and the red in the background as a driver to make the left side of his shirt more red and pink. First off, I'm going to use a radial filter to target the left side of his shirt. This time I'm going to change the hue to a red purple color. And now let's just enlarge it a little bit. Bring it up here. Okay. Make sure it doesn't contaminate the signboard itself. We're not going to deal with any of the texture or clarity yet, as we're going to do it globally later. Now let's just go back into the gradient filter that we did earlier. I'm going to give it more blue to take away the yellow tone from the ground and the building. And now we're going to bring the hue to the left side. It gets a natural, but that's okay since we're going for this particular cyberpunk look. Close that. As you can see, we didn't change any of the HSL slider this time, just to show you there are many different ways to edit the same photo. Okay, now let's just bring up the overall vibrance a little bit. And texture, clarity as usual. Be careful with the clarity. There's just so much detail with the Sigma art lens. And lastly, I'll create another radial filter around his face, just to bring up the shadow a little bit, to see his face a little bit better. Awesome. And that's all I have for the photos. I hope I got them done in under 20 minutes. Let me know what you think about my edit. And remember to like, subscribe, and stay safe. I'll see you next time. Peace!